Welcome to the Credit Edge. Ideas on time and working for a living. Let's get started.
Today, we're opening up a conversation that feels intensely personal, but also fundamentally universal for anyone who clocks in.
For anyone who works a shift, who trades their daylight just to get by.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're using this singular piece of writing, a reflection called the Credit Edge lens, not as a strategy guide, but more as a way to look at the world differently.
A new way to see.
Yes. It's about redefining what wealth actually means. Taking it out of the world of dollars and cents and putting it firmly back into life itself.
And that's such an essential distinction. The author of this piece is very, very clear from the start. This is a lens. It's a filter for your decisions.
Not a rule book.
No, not at all. It's built on this premise that if you just shift your focus from dollars to hours, you get a kind of clarity that the whole complex world of finance often tries to obscure.
Right. It pulls you away from all the noise, doesn't it? The market predictions, the hot stocks.
All of it. And it grounds you in honest choices.
And the tone is so important here. It's reflective. It's not prescriptive. It acknowledges right up front how hard this shift in perspective is. Let me just read a passage that I think really sets the stage for our whole dive today.
Please.
It says, I lived many years trading my hours blindly. I still catch myself doing it, but each day I see a little more. Each day I choose with a little more care. I'm a long way from mastery, but I'm learning to measure the cost of my life in time, not in dollars. This is the Credit Edge lens.
That vulnerability is the whole foundation, isn't it?
It is.
It recognizes that most of us begin this journey, this financial awareness, after years of trading our hours by default, just trying to keep up.
Yeah.
So our mission today really is to deeply analyze this lens, to connect that shared, often exhausting personal experience of trading time for survival, to connect it to the powerful fundamental truths that hold up the entire financial structure. We're really going for insight here, not instruction.
We're filtering out the how-to and focusing completely on the how-to-see, which is the core of what this philosophy provides. We want to understand what the source even means when it says something like discipline builds peace.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack that core foundation, because everything in the Credit Edge lens seems to start with a truth that is so simple, it's almost always ignored.
Well, that's the key insight, right? The source grounds its entire argument in this one universal axiom. Time is the only real wealth. Everything else is a reflection of how we spend it.
That's the whole thesis right there.
It's the absolute thesis, and it demands that we stop treating the units we trade money as the ultimate metric and start treating the source of those units, our time, as the true currency.
And for anyone who's ever worked an hourly job, this connection is it's visceral, it's immediate.
Oh, absolutely.
We live by the clock, we negotiate our hourly rates. We understand that a dollar bill represents, 6 minutes or 12 minutes or 20 minutes of our actual life, depending on our pay. It's not some abstract thing.
It's a direct trade. And this is where the analysis in the essay connects money right back to life experience. It says, money records the hours we gave away. Every paycheck holds pieces of our life.
Wow.
I mean, if you really, truly internalize that idea, your bank account transforms. It's no longer just a numerical ledger.
Right.
It becomes a detailed journal describing the segments of your life you traded away. It's the ledger of your existence. And that moment of awakening, that moment you realize you've been trading pieces of your life, often blindly.
Yeah.
That's the first step. That's the edge.
What's so fascinating to me is how the essay roots this truth, not in some grand financial theory, but in the quiet, mundane, and honestly, often painful realities of a working week.
It grounds the lens entirely in lived reality. That's what makes it so powerful for us. The source talks about the quiet ways this truth shows up, the signs that our time has been undervalued.
Like what?
Well, it says, in long commutes before sunrise, in dishes left in the sink because the shift ran late, and that frustration of seeing the grocery bill that rises faster than our paychecks.
This gets to the hidden costs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We prioritize dollars over hours because we feel we have to, but the source makes it so clear there's this massive cost to that depletion.
A huge cost.
It's that moment when, as the essay says, we want to be present, but feel the weight of tomorrow pressing against tonight.
That weight is the recognition that your future self is already obligated. It's already been put to work to service the necessities you incurred today.
So the hidden cost is anxiety, it's fatigue.
It's the erosion of presence. You might be home physically, but the hours you traded blindly earlier in the week, or the hours you've already committed to next week's debts, They prevent you from being truly present.
With your family, or even just with yourself.
Exactly. The weight of tomorrow is just the weight of borrowed time.
Okay, so let's make this tangible then. If we accept that time is the first wealth, let's look at its inverse. Credit. The source gives this truly startling definition of credit that forces us to move way beyond the FICO score mentality.
It does. It defines credit in these profoundly foundational, very human terms. The quote is so simple, but it's transformative. It says, "Credit is trust measured in time. It is the agreement that tomorrow will repay today."
Okay, wow. So when a working person takes out a loan, they're not just borrowing currency, they're borrowing life itself.
That is precisely the consequence the source hammers home again and again. Credit becomes borrowed life, unlived hours, future time already spoken for.
Unlived hours.
Imagine a loan as a withdrawal from your future time account. Every loan you agree to isn't just a line item on some bank ledger, it is a claim on your next chapter. Your future self has less freedom, less flexibility, fewer options, because the financial system has already secured a portion of their hours.
But this sounds incredibly punitive. If you need money for an emergency or, for something that will genuinely increase your ability to earn more later, is the lens just saying all debt is bad?
That's a really important challenge. And no, the lens doesn't say all debt is bad. What it does, and this is crucial, is it forces awareness of the unseen price.
Okay.
The source emphasizes the constant cost. Every interest charge is a reminder that time has value even when we forget to protect it. The crucial point is that interest is the fee you pay for having used your future time today. So if you forget the value of your time, the interest serves as a painfully physical reminder.
Okay, let's ground this. Give me a concrete example for someone listening right now. Say you have a $1,000 credit card balance at a pretty common rate, say 25% APR, and your hourly wage is $20. How much time are you actually working just to service that debt?
Okay, that is exactly the calculation the lens demands we make. At 25% APR, that $1,000 debt generates $250 in interest over a year.
Right.
At a $20 hourly rate, you have to work 12 and a half hours just to pay the interest before you even touch the principal.
A day and a half of work.
A full extra day of labor simply to tread water if you're only paying the minimum. That single debt is securing 12 and a half hours of your life next year, regardless of what crises or opportunities come up.
12 and a half hours. Dedicated purely to the interest on one bad month or one necessary emergency. When you look at it that way, the unseen price is, it's impossible to ignore.
It becomes impossible. It shifts the whole debt conversation from math to something closer to metaphysics. And the final consequence of this, as the source points out, is that this debt shapes not just our bank account, but where we work and how long we stay.
And that is the ultimate loss of freedom.
Absolutely. Debt becomes a spatial and a temporal constraint. It's a box. If you have significant debt, you can't just take the risk of quitting a toxic job, even if it's destroying your mental health.
Because you have to comply.
Your necessity to comply with the existing system is just too high. The debt dictates the duration of your compliance, locking you into trading hours and environments you wouldn't otherwise choose. It dictates the boundaries of your next chapter.
All right, let's move into the dissection phase here, because the source material does a fantastic job of proving this philosophy by detailing these specific burdens of debt that are just. They're instantly familiar to anyone in the working class.
Yes.
These aren't abstract concepts. They're the shackles we feel every day.
They're the tangible reminders that our time has already been claimed. The essay is brilliant here because it breaks down how each of these familiar items represents a specific and often a very unfavorable trade of future hours for present utility.
Okay, so let's take the first one, the student loan. The source says it's the student loan that outlives the job it paid for.
Right, and this reveals such a critical flaw in the standard model of that trade. The initial deal was time and money, or borrowed money for education, all under the promise of higher future earning.
The classic pitch.
But the essay notes the asset, the utility you got from the education. It depreciates faster than the liability. Many degrees lose their relevance, or the job that was promised never materializes, but the debt remains immutable.
So you traded years of your future labor for what turned out to be a temporary advantage, but the debt just continues as a claim on your hours long after that initial utility is gone.
Yes. It's a claim on time that follows you, even if you pivot careers, even if you realize the degree just wasn't worth the cost in the first place.
Which means you are now working hours, trading your life to service a past decision that no longer serves your present self.
That is a massive temporal inefficiency, and it forces prolonged compliance.
Okay, next on the list, the car note. The essay calls it the car note that lasts longer than the pride of owning it.
This is such a classic case of instant gratification requiring significant, prolonged future labor. We trade immediate comfort, the new car smell, a temporary sense of status.
For what?
For 4, 5, 6, even 7 years of obligated payments. The emotional metric, that pride of binnick, vanishes so quickly, often within the first 6 months. But the time commitment required to pay the note, that remains fully intact.
And the hidden cost here isn't just the interest, is it? It's the fact that the car is losing value every single day while your time commitment to pay for it is fixed.
Exactly. You are literally paying for a depreciating asset with non-depreciating labor your life hours. That commitment represents a huge block of unlived, already spoken for hours. If you lose your job, those hours still must be found, maybe by taking on 2 less desirable jobs, all because of that car note commitment.
The third example is the largest one for most people, the mortgage. The source says it shapes where we work and how long we stay.
And this is the ultimate temporal commitment, isn't it? A mortgage is never just a house payment. It's a commitment that severely limits your career choice and your geographical flexibility for decades.
Decades.
If you have a huge mortgage commitment, you are structurally prevented from moving for better opportunity or even from downsizing to reduce stress.
It dictates the terms of your survival and the duration of your compliance. It ties your financial fate to one specific location.
It literally does. If the only jobs available that allow you to service that mortgage are within a 50-mile radius, the debt has restricted your economic universe. It requires you to prioritize the hours needed to service the debt over the hours you might want to spend advancing your career or just living closer to family. It's a decades-long claim on your time.
And finally, there's the insidious shadow of credit card debt. The essay describes it as the credit card balance that grows from one bad month into a quiet shadow that follows us for years.
This is a perfect illustration of how a small lapse in awareness, one emergency, one difficult month, can initiate a massive long-term drain on your future hours.
Because the interest rates are so high.
They're incredibly high. So that small temporary slice of borrowed time from the past becomes what the author calls a quiet shadow, meaning it's always there, always present, eroding your freedom year after year after year.
A small lapse leading to a long-term drain.
Yes. You're forced to earn all those hours back, plus a huge amount of interest, purely because you borrowed a small slice of time when you weren't prepared. When you use this analytical lens, you see so clearly how debt becomes financial, emotional, and personal.
Shaping every single decision you make.
From where you shop for groceries to whether you dare to ask for a raise.
So awareness is control.
Yeah.
These burdens. They're not just numbers on a page. They're structural chains that dictate the minimum amount of hours we have to trade every single month just to stay in place.
Which then brings us to the larger structural reality, which the source acknowledges. These forces aren't new. It's brutally honest about the power dynamic.
Yeah, that line is stark. Those who lend shape the rules. Those who borrow follow them. This has been true for 4,000 years.
And what's fascinating there is the humility, the recognition that the rules of debt and credit are ancient. Systems are designed to reward compliance.
And what does compliance mean for us?
For the working person, compliance means trading your hours without thinking. It means accepting the interest rate, accepting the terms, and just following the rules as they're given to you.
But the credit edge lens demands awareness instead of that compliance.
It does. Awareness is the ability to see the trade beneath the surface before you even enter into it. It's the moment you stop seeing a $300 monthly payment and start seeing the 15 hours of mandatory labor required to service it.
The system rewards the compliant.
And the lens rewards the aware.
Okay, but I have to challenge this, though. Because for so many working people, compliance isn't really a choice. It's survival. If you need a car to get to the job that pays the bills, you have to comply with the car note rules. If you need a house, you comply with the mortgage rules. Isn't this lens just adding a layer of anxiety to an unavoidable reality?
That is a critical question, and it speaks directly to the experience of the working class. The source doesn't claim we can opt out of the system entirely, but it clarifies the true nature of what it calls the edge. The edge isn't about avoiding the necessary trades, it's about making them with your eyes wide open.
Okay.
The essay is very clear about what the edge is not. It says, it is not speed, it is not prediction, it is not being clever or loud.
So the edge isn't about finding some secret loophole.
No, the edge is defined as clarity. Clarity before you choose, clarity before you commit, clarity before the world trades your hours for you.
Yeah.
It's the ability to quantify the cost in your own life units before you sign the dotted line.
So it shifts the negotiation. It moves it from one of just pure need to one of intentionality.
Exactly. It's the ability, as the author says, to see the hours behind each dollar, to see the trade inside the decision.
That's the real operational shift.
And that is the quiet power this lens gives to the working class. We might not control the prime interest rate, but we can control our commitment. If you realize that a $50 difference in a monthly payment represents 3 extra hours of your labor every single month, you might change your decision.
Right.
That ability to see the inherent claim on your time in every dollar, that is the definition of the edge in this framework.
But where does this profound clarity even come from? It sounds like a huge, almost philosophical undertaking. The source says it comes slowly, in tired moments.
And that is maybe the most human part of this entire reflection. The author emphasizes this isn't some eureka moment you have during a meditation retreat.
No.
It arrives when you're physically and mentally depleted, because that's when the artifice of financial status falls away and only the raw cost remains.
The source describes it so beautifully, emphasizing that emotional weight. It says, when a shift ends and the day sits heavy on your chest.
And that heaviness, that's the physical manifestation of the hours you just traded. It's that moment of exhaustion where your guard is down and the reality that your life is being dictated by external obligations it surfaces. The realization isn't always pleasant, but it's essential.
And the specific moment of realization is when you translate the currency back into life. When you check your bank account and see time instead of numbers.
And that's it. That's the awakening. When you stop seeing $500 in debt and start seeing 60 hours of your life traded away, it forces a fundamental change in your behavior.
Which leads to the critical operational mechanism of the lens. These simple questions the author is still practicing.
Yes, the questions that guide every decision. What is being taken? What am I giving away? What will this cost in time?
Okay, let's spend a minute modeling this, because this is where the philosophy becomes a practical tool for anyone listening. These questions are the mechanism for stepping out of default choices.
They are. Default choices are so often dictated by consumer culture or systemic pressure. The new phone, the slightly bigger house, the consolidation loan that promises relief now but extends the commitment for years. The practice of asking these questions helps you reclaim your time through, as the essay says, awareness practiced daily.
So let's take a complex scenario, one that's very familiar to a working listener. You have, say, $8,000 in credit card debt at 25% interest. You qualify for a personal consolidation loan at 12% interest. Feels like a win. You plan to pay it off over 5 years. Let's apply the questions.
Let's use the lens. First question. What is being taken? The initial cost is clear. The interest rate drops from 25% to 12%. That's a large chunk of future hours you're reclaiming from interest charges.
This is like a no-brainer.
But what is being taken quietly is the freedom of a short timeline. You're taking a revolving debt, which you could theoretically pay off aggressively in 1 or 2 years if you got a windfall, and you're turning it into an installment loan that guarantees 5 years of monthly payments.
So you're trading a high variable cost for a long fixed obligation. You might save money, but you sacrifice temporal flexibility.
Precisely. You've guaranteed 5 years of debt service. Now, question 2. What am I giving away?
Okay.
You are giving away 5 years of potential freedom and peace. You're giving away the ability to be truly debt-free in a shorter period of time. And maybe most importantly, you're giving away the powerful behavioral lesson that the high-interest debt was teaching you.
The urgency.
The urgency to eliminate that claim on your time immediately. By extending it and lowering the psychological pain, you might be giving away the very thing required for true behavioral change.
And finally, what will this cost in time?
This is where we calculate. If you paid that 12% loan for 5 years, you'd spend about $2,500 in total interest. If your wage is $25 an hour, that's 100 hours of your future labor committed solely to interest spread over the next 5 years. You now know the precise temporal costs.
And if you didn't consolidate?
If you chose not to and paid off the 25% debt over, say, 3 years instead, maybe you'd pay $3,500 in interest. That's 140 hours. The trade is 40 hours of labor saved in exchange for 2 more years of continuous temporal obligation.
So the clarity isn't that one option is good and one's bad.
No. The clarity is that you see the full cost. You see the 40 hours saved, but you also see the 2 years of extended obligation. And that allows you to choose alignment over just raw necessity. The process of asking those 3 questions is how you step out of default choices.
The default choice is always the one that promises immediate relief.
Always. The intentional choice requires that time cost analysis.
Yeah.
And it allows for discipline carried quietly, helping you, when you come home tired, reclaim control over your time, one decision at a time.
You know, this philosophy is brilliant because it takes this abstract, often intimidating language of finance, and it translates it into the concrete, accessible language of a lived life. The way the source analyzes these financial terms, relating them back to time and intentional living.
Yeah.
That feels like the true synthesis point of this whole deep dive.
I think so too. This is where we realize that finance is really just a language. It's a language that the system uses to talk about value. The credit edge lens forces us to inject our value, our time back into that conversation.
Okay, let's start with debt. The source says it teaches how quickly we borrow our future.
Right. So the standard financial definition of debt is just. It's a contractual obligation to repay principal and interest. Simple.
Right.
But the credit edge interpretation is a lesson in temporal fragility. It shows us how quickly we can trade away our options and compromise our freedom for fleeting comfort or immediate necessity. The lesson isn't just about repayment, it's about vigilance. How quickly one decision can claim years of our future hours.
Creating these structural demands on our time.
Exactly.
So the opposite of that has to be cash flow. The source states, cash flow teaches how we reclaim our hours.
Yeah. Financially, cash flow is just the movement of money in and out of an account. But in the credit edge lens, if debt shows the drain on time, cash flow shows the return, the reclamation.
Okay.
Positive cash flow, when you look at it through this lens, is the monthly ability to say no to new obligations and yes to protecting your time. When our cash flow is healthy, we're building a reserve of time that isn't already spoken for.
So if you have positive cash flow, you are literally building temporal freedom. You aren't immediately dependent on the next paycheck to cover last month's choices.
That's it. And that allows for a massive reduction in the stress and anxiety that drives so many poor decisions. That temporal freedom is what allows a working person to take the risk of seeking better work, knowing they have a buffer of protected hours.
Which brings us to risk. The standard definition is usually the quantifiable possibility of loss or gain, but the source says, risk teaches humility.
In the financial world, risk is often about seeking higher returns by accepting greater volatility. But in the context of our hours, risk is a lesson in humility. It's the recognition that every choice has the potential to cost us more time than we anticipated.
The system is designed to sell us risky consumption.
All the time. We take on more debt because we believe our job security or our health will remain constant.
Humility, then, is understanding that the working life is constantly exposed to shocks. A layoff, an illness, a car breakdown.
Yes. And humility requires us to structure our lives, our balance sheet, to absorb those shocks without having to sacrifice another year of our life just to recover. The financial risk is losing money. The credit edge risk is losing years. That requires a much higher safety margin of protected time.
Then we have yield and cycles. The source states, yield teaches patience, cycles teach awareness.
Standard yield is the return on an investment. But the highest yield in the credit edge lens, which is peace, freedom, and time flexibility, it comes slowly. It requires patience. It's not the excitement of a quick trade or a lottery win. It is the slow, consistent accumulation of protected hours year after year. The yield is the quiet growth of peace.
And cycles. This feels crucial for understanding the macroeconomic pressures on the working class.
It is. Financially, cycles are the predictable but irregular shifts in economic activity. For us, these cycles teach awareness that nothing is permanent. The job security we have today might not exist tomorrow. And this awareness forces us to prepare our time balance sheet for that inevitability, not by predicting the next recession, but by ensuring we haven't mortgaged every single moment of our future.
Okay, moving beyond the vocabulary, the source analyzes the concept of a balance sheet itself, calling them mirrors.
That metaphor is so profoundly psychological. A balance sheet, your list of assets versus your liabilities, it's not just some neutral financial document. It's a window into your priorities and your anxieties.
It reveals, as the source says, what we carry.
Meaning the sum of our obligations and burdens. They show what we fear, which is often reflected in the need for debt or insurance to mitigate some potential temporal loss. And as you said, they reveal what we value. Where are our hours actually being allocated?
And the mirror reveals patterns we inherited and the ones we continue without noticing.
Exactly. Are we inheriting a pattern of excessive consumption that requires constant labor, or a pattern of saving that offers buffer time? The balance sheet shows the habits that either protect or consume our hours.
And the forces shaping the market. These are not abstract numbers for the working class. The source connects these huge global forces right back to our immediate, life-altering reality.
It makes it so clear that for those of us trading hours for survival, market forces are not theoretical concepts on a screen. When the cost of borrowing goes up globally, we don't worry about bond yields.
No, we worry about the immediate increase in the claim on our hours.
They show up instantly in rent raises, grocery bills, interest rates, and the cost of one unexpected emergency.
These forces don't affect our investment portfolios as much as they dictate the very structure of our daily lives.
They shape the hours we work, the risks we take, and the sacrifices we justify because survival demands it. These are structural demands on our time, and the lens equips us to withstand them, not by fighting the system, but by increasing our awareness of the true cost of our trades.
So if we understand these structural demands, how do we establish control? How do we find peace amidst all this chaos? The source gives us a clean three-part mechanism for taking back our time.
And this is the practical summary of the lens application. It defines the relationship between the external forces and our internal self-determination. First, credit is how systems control time. That's the external structural mechanism designed to keep us compliant.
Right.
Second, awareness is how we take time back. That is the internal act of seeing the hours behind the dollars. And finally, discipline is how we keep it.
I want to challenge that concept of discipline for a second. For someone who's working 2 jobs just to make ends meet, the word discipline can sound like a moral judgment or just another burden.
Yeah.
What does discipline look like through this lens?
That's a crucial distinction to make. Discipline here is not rigid self-denial. It is not punishment. It is the quiet practice of intention.
Okay.
If awareness is seeing the cost in time, discipline is the protective measure. It's the conscious choice to defer a comfort, that new car, that dinner out, because you know the temporal cost of that comfort is just too high right now. It is the boundary you put up around your reclaimed hours.
So discipline is about protecting the hours you've already fought so hard to reclaim, making sure they're spent intentionally.
That's it exactly. And the outcome of this daily practice of awareness and discipline is peace. The essay concludes this section by stating, peace is what grows when we stop trading hours blindly. It grows slowly, protected by the awareness and the discipline you apply, ensuring that more and more of your time is spent on your values rather than just servicing past obligations.
So we've built the philosophical structure, we've dissected the common claims on our hours, and we've translated the language of finance. Now we get to the ultimate goal of this framework, redefining wealth itself. The credit edge lens demands that we consciously contrast the conventional definition with this new time-based metric.
And the source begins by making it crystal clear what conventional wealth is not in this context. It filters out all the noise we get from advertising and media. It lists 3 key negations to just immediately dismiss the outward-facing definitions we usually encounter.
Which are?
1, wealth is not accumulation. 2, wealth is not status. And 3, wealth is not appearance.
This immediately separates the lens from the typical hustle culture or the consumerist narrative. It's not about how much you have, it's about what you don't owe.
It shifts the focus from the size of the bank account to the quality of the life being lived. Accumulation and appearance are, too often, external validations that require a massive internal expenditure of time. The lens just refuses to acknowledge those as metrics of success.
So, if wealth isn't status, what is it? It goes back to that core asset we identified right at the beginning.
It all comes back to time, the freedom metric. Wealth is defined by the freedom to choose your next move. The source states, wealth is the freedom to choose how to spend your next hour. This is the metric of true prosperity in this framework.
Not defined by how many zeros are in your account,
but by how many of your future hours are uncommitted and available for intentional deployment.
It's about that fundamental trade, owning time instead of owing it.
That is the essential definition. When you own time, you can deploy it based on your deepest values, to rest, to learn, to connect, to simply be. When you owe time, it is deployed based on the system's demands, the shifts required to service the car note, the interest payments, the compliance required to avoid temporal collapse.
And there's a vital emotional metric in here, too. Wealth is saying yes or no without fear.
And that emotional freedom is arguably the highest yield this lens produces. The fear of financial consequence is so often what compels us to accept poor trades of our hours, staying in a bad job, taking on more hours, making reactive choices under pressure. Wealth, as defined here, is the quiet confidence that allows you to choose alignment over necessity, even when that trade might temporarily cost you dollars.
And the result of this whole process, the awareness, the intentional choices, the discipline, is that peace we talked about. Peace that grows slowly and discipline that protects your life.
And maybe the most profound distillation of the whole philosophy, wealth is awareness that returns what the world takes quietly.
What the world takes quietly.
The world, through advertising, default choices, and structural demands, is constantly trying to trade your hours for its benefit. It takes your time quietly. Through these small increments of debt and consumption, awareness is the only mechanism for consistently identifying and reversing that trade, for bringing your life, hour by hour, back to you.
It sounds almost like an act of quiet resistance.
It is, because it gives the power valuation back to the individual.
We have to reiterate who this lens is specifically for. The author directs this philosophy toward a very specific audience, recognizing the exhaustion that's just inherent in their daily existence.
It is entirely focused on the realities of the working class. It completely rejects the idea that financial clarity is only for the already wealthy.
Right.
It states it explicitly. The credit edge lens is for the working class, for people who trade daylight for survival, for those who come home tired but still hope for better. It's a tool built from the ground up for those who intimately understand the daily transaction of time for wages.
The final, powerful conclusion is a refusal. A refusal to let the system decide their worth.
And that is the ultimate declaration of self-worth. The system defines your worth in terms of dollars accumulated or compliance demonstrated. The credit edge lens offers an alternative. Your worth is defined by your intentionality and the quality of the hours you protect. This is the act of quiet rebellion, refusing to accept the system's definition of value, and instead protecting the non-renewable resource of your own time.
So it means that true financial mastery, in this context, isn't about beating the market.
Yeah.
It's about mastering your own choices.
It's internal mastery. It's knowing that every dollar you choose not to spend, every hour you choose not to commit, is an hour of your life reclaimed and protected.
This has been an incredibly grounded and expansive deep dive into a philosophy that feels urgently necessary right now. We started with a personal reflection, and we ended with a quiet, revolutionary redefinition of wealth. And the core contrast remains so stark. The system defines wealth in dollars. The credit edge lens defines wealth in hours. What we truly own, what we have to fiercely protect, is our time.
And that protection, as the author stresses, is an ongoing, lifelong practice. It's not a destination. It requires humility and persistence. The author closes their reflection acknowledging that this isn't some finished project. They state, "This is the credit edge lens, a way of seeing, a way of choosing, a way of living awake, a way I'm still learning to walk."
That humility is the final essential piece that makes this journey accessible to anyone, regardless of their current financial standing. It simply requires that quiet decision to live deliberately.
And that decision begins with shifting your internal metric. When you look at your next purchase, your next commitment, or your next obligation, the question is simple. How will you measure the cost? Not in dollars, but in the hours you traded to earn them and the hours you will owe to service them.
That quiet realization, practiced daily, is the first step toward the peace that discipline brings.
We hope this deep dive provides you with the clarity needed to measure the cost of your life, not by the numbers on a screen, but by the hours in your day.
Thank you for walking us through this profound framework.
My pleasure.
Until next time, live awake.
Thanks for listening to The Credit Edge. Remember, your time matters. See you next episode.